Captain Zephyr's forearms trembled as she stared at the communication console aboard her research vessel, the Gentle Current. The delicate crystalline structures that made up her Velian physiology glowed with a pale blue fear light that she couldn't suppress. Around her, the bridge crew of various species worked frantically at their stations, their movements quick and desperate. "Captain, the pirates are closing in fast," reported her navigation officer, a slug-like Maraxian whose eye stalks swiveled nervously. "Their ships appear to be modified Corvan destroyers. At least 12 vessels." Zephyr closed her large, compound eyes for a moment. The Gentle Current was a peaceful exploration ship designed for scientific research and cultural exchange missions. They had no weapons beyond basic defensive shields, and those were already failing under the relentless assault from the pirate fleet that had ambushed them near the edge of the Spiral Arm territories. "Send out a general distress signal on all emergency frequencies," she ordered, her melodic voice cracking with strain. "Include our research data and the location of the archaeological sites we discovered. If we don't survive this, at least our findings might reach the Galactic Council." Her communications officer, a feathered Arcani with brilliant purple plumage, worked quickly at his console. "Signal transmitted, Captain. Broadcasting on all known emergency channels across multiple species networks." The ship shuddered violently as another volley of plasma bolts struck their failing shields. Through the bridge's transparent aluminum viewing ports, Zephyr could see the sleek, predatory shapes of the pirate vessels closing in like a pack of spaceborne hunters. The pirates were Corvan, a reptilian species known for their aggressive expansion and complete disregard for galactic law. "Captain, shields down to 15%, called out her chief engineer, a small, mouse-like creature whose whiskers twitched with panic. "We can't take much more of this." Zephyr's mind raced through their options. The Gentle Current was fast for a research vessel, but not fast enough to outrun military-grade ships. Their only hope was that someone, somewhere, had received their distress call and was close enough to help. "Sir, I'm detecting something strange," the Arcani communications officer said suddenly, his head tilting in confusion. "Our distress signal, it's been picked up and retransmitted. Someone is amplifying it and sending it out on frequencies I've never seen before." Before Zephyr could respond, her tactical officer spoke up with alarm in his voice. "Captain, new contacts appearing on long-range sensors. They're coming in fast from the direction of the Outer Rim territories." "More pirates?" Zephyr asked, her hope sinking further. I don't think so, sir. The sensor readings are unlike anything in our databases. The energy signatures are completely foreign." On the main screen, the image shifted to show the long-range sensor display. Moving toward them at incredible speed were dozens of contacts, their profiles unlike any ships in the Galactic Registry. They moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of military precision. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced, his feathers standing on end. "It's coming from the unknown fleet, but the language is unlike anything I've ever heard." "Put it through," Zephyr ordered. The bridge filled with a sound that was both alien and somehow deeply reassuring. It was a human voice, speaking in heavily accented galactic standard, but with an undertone of absolute determination that made Zephyr's crystalline structure resonate. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet responding to galactic distress signal. Unknown research vessel, we have your position and are moving to assist. Please maintain course and prepare for immediate combat support. Message repeats. This is the Terran Defense Fleet. Help is coming." Zephyr's crew exchanged bewildered glances. None of them had ever heard of Terrans, and this species wasn't in any of their databases. How had they received and responded to the distress signal so quickly? "Captain," her tactical officer whispered, "the unknown fleet is now within visual range." The main screen shifted to show the approaching vessels, and collective gasps echoed around the bridge. The ships were massive, angular constructs of metal and ceramic that seemed to radiate menace. They moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapon arrays that looked both primitive and devastatingly effective. "By the ancient crystals," Zephyr breathed. "How many ships are there?" "Sensors are reading 137 vessels, Captain. They range from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts. Some of them are larger than anything in the Galactic Council's fleet." The lead ship was a colossal vessel that dwarfed even the largest Corvan battleships. Its hull was painted in deep blues and grays, with markings that looked like some kind of predatory bird with spread wings. Energy readings from the ship were off the charts. "Captain," the communications officer said urgently, "the pirates are trying to hail us. They're demanding we surrender our research data and prepare to be boarded." Before Zephyr could respond, another transmission came through from the human fleet. This time the voice was different, older and carrying an authority that seemed to make the bridge itself feel more secure. "Attention, Corvan vessels. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Star Navy. You are engaged in piracy against a peaceful research vessel. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw, or we will consider you hostile combatants and respond accordingly." On the tactical display, the human fleet had arranged itself in a defensive formation around the gentle current. The smaller human fighters moved with an agility that seemed impossible for their size, while the larger ships maintained perfect spacing and positioning. "Sir," the tactical officer reported with amazement, "the human fighters are moving at speeds that should tear them apart. Their pilots are pulling acceleration forces that would kill any known species." The Corvan pirate leader's response came through on an open channel, his voice filled with arrogant amusement. "Unknown aliens, you are outnumbered and outgunned. This is Corvan territory, and we claim salvage rights on this vessel. Withdraw now or be destroyed." There was a moment of silence before the human admiral's voice returned, but now it carried a coldness that made Zephyr's crystalline form shiver. "Corvan vessels, you have failed to comply with our warning. Consider this your education in why humans are called Deathworlders." Suddenly, space erupted in controlled violence. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that defied everything Zephyr knew about space combat. Instead of the elegant plasma beams and particle weapons used by galactic civilization, the humans employed projectile weapons that fired massive slugs of metal at significant fractions of light speed. The effect was devastating. The first volley from the human dreadnoughts tore through 3 pirate ships like they were made of tissue paper. The kinetic rounds punched completely through their hulls, leaving gaping wounds that vented atmosphere and debris into space. "Impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "Those are solid projectile weapons. How are they achieving such velocity and accuracy at these ranges?" The human fighters moved like angry insects, swarming around the larger Corvan ships with impossible agility. Their weapons were smaller versions of the same kinetic technology, but they fired at rates that created continuous streams of destruction. Corvan shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, proved utterly useless against the solid rounds. "Captain, the Corvan fleet is breaking apart," the navigation officer reported with awe. "Half their ships are already destroyed or disabled. The rest are trying to flee." But the humans weren't letting them escape. The pursuing human ships moved with relentless efficiency, their weapons finding targets with mechanical precision. It wasn't just a battle. It was a demonstration of overwhelming technological and tactical superiority. Within minutes, the pirate threat that had seemed so insurmountable was completely eliminated. The space around the gentle current was filled with the debris of destroyed Corvan vessels and the escape pods of survivors who had managed to abandon ship. "This is Admiral Chen to research vessel Gentle Current," came the familiar voice. "Threat has been neutralized. Are you in need of medical assistance or emergency repairs?" Zephyr found her voice after a moment of stunned silence. This is Captain Zephyr of the Velian research vessel Gentle Current. We are undamaged but amazed. Who are you? How did you respond so quickly to our distress signal? Captain Zephyr, we are humans from the planet Earth. We received your distress signal through our deep space monitoring network. We have protocols in place to respond to any calls for help from peaceful vessels, regardless of species or origin. The human admiral paused before continuing, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a warmth that seemed at odds with the devastating military capability her fleet had just demonstrated. We understand you may have questions about who we are and where we come from. If you're willing, we'd like to invite you and your crew aboard our flagship for a proper introduction. It seems it's time the galaxy learned about humanity. Zephyr looked around at her crew, seeing wonder and curiosity replacing the fear that had gripped them moments before. These humans, these unknown Deathworlders, had appeared from nowhere to save them from certain death or capture. The implications were staggering. Admiral Chen, she replied formally, on behalf of the Gentle Current and the Velian Science Consortium, we accept your invitation. We would be honored to meet the species that just saved our lives. As the massive human dreadnought moved closer to facilitate the meeting, Zephyr couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these mysterious humans might have in store for the galaxy. The way they had appeared, fought, and communicated suggested a level of organization and capability that could change everything about how galactic politics worked. Little did she know that her simple distress call had just announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, and the repercussions would reshape the balance of power among the stars forever. Captain Zephyr's shuttle approached the human flagship with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness coursing through her crystalline form. The massive vessel, designated as the UES Indomitable according to the markings on its hull, was even more impressive up close. Its angular, aggressive design spoke of a species that had learned warfare through necessity rather than choice. The shuttle bay that welcomed them was vast enough to hold 3 ships the size of the Gentle Current. Human crew members moved about with crisp efficiency, their bipedal forms covered in what appeared to be practical uniforms rather than the elaborate ceremonial garments favored by most galactic species. Fascinating, murmured Dr. Helix, Zephyr's chief scientist, whose tentacled form rippled with curiosity. Look at their movement patterns. They walk upright on only 2 limbs, yet they demonstrate remarkable balance and coordination. As they disembarked, Zephyr was struck by the humans' physical appearance. They were relatively small compared to most galactic species, standing roughly at her shoulder height, but there was something in their posture and the way they carried themselves that suggested compressed strength and alertness. A human female approached them, her dark hair pulled back in a practical style, and her brown eyes holding both warmth and an intensity that reminded Zephyr uncomfortably of a predator. This had to be Admiral Chen. "Captain Zephyr, welcome aboard the Indomitable," the Admiral said, her voice carrying the same reassuring tone from their earlier communications. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. This is my senior staff." The humans who accompanied her were equally impressive in their bearing. Each one moved with purpose and confidence, and Zephyr noticed that even in this peaceful setting, they maintained what could only be described as combat readiness. "Admiral Chen, I cannot express our gratitude enough for your intervention," Zephyr replied formally. "But I must ask, how did you receive our distress signal so quickly? And how did you amass such a response force?" Admiral Chen smiled, and the expression somehow made her look both more human and more dangerous. "That's a longer story than you might expect, Captain. Would you and your crew like a tour of our ship while we talk? I think it might help explain how humanity operates." As they walked through the corridors of the Indomitable, Zephyr was amazed by what she saw. The ship hummed with activity, but it was controlled, purposeful activity. Every human they passed acknowledged their admiral with respect, but without the cowering deference she'd seen in other military hierarchies. "You see, Captain," Admiral Chen explained as they walked, "humanity learned about the galaxy quite by accident about 15 years ago. One of our deep space exploration probes intercepted a data packet from a damaged ship near our solar system. They entered what appeared to be a strategic planning center, where holographic displays showed star charts and tactical information. The scale of the data was breathtaking. It covered sectors of space that the Galactic Council had barely begun to explore. The damaged ship was Corvin," continued Admiral Chen, her voice taking on a harder edge. "The crew had been engaged in what they called salvage operations, but which our analysis clearly identified as piracy and slave trading. The data packet contained not just star charts, but records of attacks on peaceful vessels." Dr. Helix's tentacles curled with distress. "You discovered galactic civilization through evidence of its worst elements? Essentially, yes," confirmed the Admiral. "But we also found something else in that data. We found evidence that most galactic species were peaceful researchers, traders, and explorers who were being preyed upon by various aggressive factions." Commander Rodriguez, a stocky human male with graying hair, stepped forward. "That's when the Global Defense Council made a decision that would define humanity's approach to galactic affairs." "Which was?" asked Zephyr. "We decided that if we were going to enter galactic civilization, we would do so as protectors, not conquerors," Admiral Chen replied. "We spent the next 15 years building a fleet and establishing monitoring stations throughout this sector of space." They entered another section of the ship, and Zephyr gasped. Through massive viewing ports, she could see the human fleet in its full glory. Hundreds of ships of various sizes moved in perfect formation, their weapon arrays tracking potential threats with mechanical precision. "This isn't your entire fleet, is it?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Oh no," Admiral Chen laughed, and there was something in that laugh that sent chills through Zephyr's crystalline structure. "This is just the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We currently have 12 such fleets positioned throughout the galaxy, with more being constructed every day." 12 fleets, whispered Dr. Helix. "Each the size of this one?" "Some larger," confirmed Commander Rodriguez. "The first fleet, stationed near our home system, has over 2,000 ships." Captain Zephyr felt her legs weaken as the implications hit her. Humanity had built a military force that dwarfed anything the Galactic Council could field, and they had done it in secret over just 15 years. The level of organization and industrial capability that represented was staggering. "But why reveal yourselves now?" she asked. "Why respond to our distress signal?" Admiral Chen led them to a comfortable briefing room where they could sit and talk more freely. The furniture had been quickly adapted to accommodate different body types, showing the kind of practical consideration that seemed typical of human thinking. "Because we've been waiting for the right moment to introduce ourselves to galactic civilization," the Admiral explained. "We wanted our first contact to be in a situation where we could demonstrate our intentions clearly." "And those intentions are?" Zephyr prompted. "To serve as guardians for peaceful species and explorers like yourselves," Admiral Chen replied without hesitation. "We've been monitoring galactic communications for years. We know about the Corvin expansion, the Valdari raiding parties, the Nexus crime syndicates. We know that peaceful species like the Velians, the Arcani, and dozens of others are constantly under threat." She leaned forward, her brown eyes intense with conviction. "We also know that the Galactic Council, while well-intentioned, lacks the military capability to effectively protect its member species. That's where humanity comes in." Commander Rodriguez activated a holographic display that showed incident reports from across the galaxy. The number of piracy attacks, raids, and outright conquests was sobering. Every day, peaceful researchers, traders, and explorers are attacked by various predatory species, he explained. The Council's response is usually to file formal protests and implement trade sanctions. Meanwhile, innocent beings die or disappear into slave markets. "So you've appointed yourselves as Galactic Police?" Dr. Helix asked, his tone uncertain. "Not police," Admiral Chen corrected. "Guardians. We don't seek to rule or control galactic civilization. We seek to protect it from those who would destroy or exploit it." She stood and moved to one of the viewing ports, gazing out at the stars beyond. "You see, Captain, humans evolved on what the galaxy would classify as a death world. Our planet tested us with extreme weather, dangerous predators, and natural disasters that would devastate most civilized worlds. But rather than making us just another predatory species, those challenges taught us something valuable," Commander Rodriguez added. "They taught us that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak, and that civilization is worth fighting for." Admiral Chen turned back to face them. "When we learned about galactic civilization, we realized that most species had evolved in much gentler environments. You developed technology and culture without the constant threat of annihilation that shaped humanity. That's not a weakness. It's actually beautiful. But it does leave you vulnerable to species that did evolve as predators." Zephyr was beginning to understand the scope of what these humans were proposing. "You want to be the galaxy's defense force? We want to be the option that peaceful species can call upon when diplomacy fails and sanctions aren't enough," Admiral Chen confirmed. "We want to be the response that pirates and raiders fear to encounter." As if summoned by her words, an alert chimed softly through the ship's communication system. A human officer approached Admiral Chen and whispered something in her ear. The Admiral's expression grew grimmer. "Captain Zephyr, it seems your rescue has had immediate consequences," she announced. "We're receiving multiple distress signals from across this sector. Word of our intervention against the Corvan pirates has spread, and other threatened vessels are calling for help." She looked directly at Zephyr with an expression that combined determination with something that might have been anticipation. "This is the moment we've been preparing for. The galaxy is about to learn that there's a new player in the game, and that predatory species can no longer operate with impunity." The holographic display updated to show incoming distress calls. There were dozens of them. Research vessels under attack, trade convoys being raided, even entire colonies calling for help against aggressive neighbors. "Will you help them all?" Zephyr asked, amazed. "Every single one," Admiral Chen replied without hesitation. "We have the ships, we have the crews, and we have the commitment. No peaceful vessel that calls for help will be ignored." She turned to address the bridge crew. "Signal all fleet commanders. Dispersal pattern Omega is now in effect. Each squadron is to respond to the nearest distress signal and render immediate assistance. Rules of engagement are weapons free against any vessels engaged in piracy or unprovoked attacks." The efficiency with which the human fleet began to reorganize itself was breathtaking. Ships peeled away from the main formation with purpose and precision, heading toward different points in space where help was needed. "Captain Zephyr," Admiral Chen said, "I have a proposition for you. We could escort you back to Velian space safely, or you could remain here as our guests and witness the beginning of a new era in galactic history." Zephyr looked at her crew, seeing curiosity and excitement overcoming their initial fear. These humans had saved their lives, revealed themselves as the galaxy's potential protectors, and were now offering them a front-row seat to watch history unfold. "Admiral Chen," she replied formally, "the Velian Science Consortium has always valued the pursuit of knowledge above all else. Observing humanity's first widespread intervention in galactic affairs would be invaluable research. We accept your invitation." Admiral Chen smiled, and this time the expression held genuine warmth. "Excellent. I think you're going to find the next few days very interesting indeed." As the Indomitable moved toward the nearest distress signal, Zephyr realized that her simple research mission had accidentally triggered the most significant shift in galactic politics in recorded history. Humanity was about to announce itself to the galaxy, not through diplomacy or trade, but through the simple act of helping those who needed protection. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to have Deathworld guardians watching over it. 3 standard galactic days had passed since Captain Zephyr's rescue, and the galaxy was in chaos. Not the destructive kind of chaos that came from war or disaster, but the bewildering chaos that accompanied a complete reshuffling of everything everyone thought they knew about their universe. Aboard the human flagship Indomitable, Zephyr watched in fascination as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood before a massive holographic display that showed the entire sector, with red indicators marking every location where human forces had intervened in response to distress calls. "Status report, Commander Rodriguez," Admiral Chen requested. The stocky human officer consulted his tactical display. "In the past 72 hours, we've responded to 137 distress calls. We've eliminated or dispersed 43 pirate fleets, rescued 26 captured vessels, and provided emergency assistance to 51 ships in distress." Dr. Helix's tentacles writhed with amazement. 137 interventions? How is that even possible? "Preparation and commitment," Admiral Chen replied simply. "We've been watching and waiting for years. We knew where the trouble spots were, and we positioned our forces accordingly." The holographic display zoomed in to show various engagement zones. At each location, human ships were either completing rescue operations or escorting previously threatened vessels to safety. The efficiency was remarkable. "But the real story," continued Commander Rodriguez, "is the reaction from the various galactic governments." New displays materialized, showing communication intercepts and official statements from across known space. Zephyr read through them with growing amazement. The Corvin High Command had issued an emergency decree suspending all salvage operations in sectors where human forces were active. The Valdari raider clans had similarly announced a temporary cessation of expansion activities. Even the notorious Nexus crime syndicates had gone suspiciously quiet. "They're afraid," Zephyr realized. "The most aggressive species in the galaxy are actually afraid." "Terror might be a better word," Admiral Chen noted with satisfaction. "When predators suddenly encounter something higher on the food chain than themselves, they tend to reassess their behavior patterns quickly." A new priority alert flashed on the display. The communications officer announced, "Admiral, we're receiving an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council Central Command. They're requesting immediate diplomatic contact with human leadership." Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. "Put them through." The holographic display shifted to show a conference chamber containing representatives from dozens of species. Zephyr recognized several of them as high-ranking members of the Galactic Council, including Chancellor Morpheus of the Centauri Collective and High Arbiter Zelana of the Peacekeeping Assembly. "This is Chancellor Morpheus of the Galactic Council addressing the human fleet," came the familiar translated voice. "We urgently request a diplomatic meeting to discuss your recent activities in our territories." Admiral Chen stepped forward, her bearing formally military. "Chancellor Morpheus, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Star Navy. We acknowledge your request for diplomatic contact. However, I should clarify that these are not your territories. They are open space where peaceful beings have the right to travel safely." There was visible consternation among the council members. Chancellor Morpheus, a tall reptilian being with elaborate head crests, leaned forward. "Admiral Chen, while we appreciate your assistance to vessels in distress, your military actions have been undertaken without council authorization. Several member species have expressed concern about unknown alien forces operating in galactic space." "Which member species?" Admiral Chen asked pointedly. "The Velians whose research vessel we rescued?" The Arcani traders we protected from raiders? Or perhaps the Corvan Empire, whose pirate fleets we dispersed? High Arbiter Zelana, a graceful insectoid with translucent wings, spoke up. Admiral, we understand your intentions may be benevolent, but galactic law requires that all military actions be coordinated through the Council's Peacekeeping Assembly. Admiral Chen's smile was polite, but carried an edge that made Zephyr's crystalline structure resonate with unease. High Arbiter, with respect, how long does the Council's authorization process typically take? The standard review period for military intervention requests is 60 to 90 standard days, Zelana replied proudly. And how long do you estimate it takes for pirates to kill or enslave the crew of a captured vessel? The question hung in the air like a weapon. Zelana's wings fluttered nervously. That is a different matter entirely. No, it isn't, Admiral Chen replied firmly. Every day the Council spends in committee meetings and bureaucratic reviews. Innocent beings die. We've been monitoring your response times to crisis situations, and they are utterly inadequate. Commander Rodriguez stepped forward and activated a new display. Over the past 5 years, the Council has received over 3,000 requests for emergency assistance. The average response time was 47 days. The success rate for actually providing meaningful help was 12%. The Council chamber erupted in defensive protests from multiple species, but Admiral Chen raised her hand for silence, and somehow her gesture carried enough authority that the room quieted. We're not here to criticize the Council's intentions, she continued. Your commitment to peace and diplomacy is admirable. But when diplomacy fails and peaceful beings are under attack, someone needs to act immediately. That's where humanity comes in. Chancellor Morpheus regained his composure. Admiral Chen, surely you understand that unilateral military action by an unknown species could destabilize the entire galactic political structure. Chancellor, Admiral Chen replied, the galactic political structure is already unstable. It's unstable because predatory species can attack peaceful ones with virtual impunity, knowing that the Council's response will be too slow and too weak to matter. She gestured to the tactical display showing the locations of recent interventions. In 3 days, we've eliminated more pirate threats than the Council has managed in 3 years. Not because we're more aggressive, but because we're willing to act when action is needed. Dr. Helix whispered to Zephyr, she's dismantling their entire argument simply by stating facts. High Arbiter Zelana tried a different approach. Admiral Chen, what assurance do we have that humanity will not become a threat to peaceful species? Your military capability appears to exceed anything in Council records. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. High Arbiter, you have the word of Captain Zephyr and her crew, who have observed our operations firsthand. You also have the testimony of every being we've rescued over the past 3 days. We invite any Council representatives to accompany our fleets and observe our methods. She paused for emphasis. But most importantly, you have our actions as evidence of our intentions. In every single intervention, we have eliminated only the aggressors and provided aid to the victims. We have claimed no territory, demanded no tribute, and imposed no political conditions. Chancellor Morpheus conferred quietly with other Council members before responding. Admiral Chen, the Council is prepared to offer humanity observer status and the opportunity to participate in our peacekeeping efforts through proper channels. We appreciate the offer, Admiral Chen replied, but we respectfully decline. We will not allow bureaucratic procedures to delay responses to emergency situations. However, we are willing to establish a formal communication protocol to coordinate our activities with yours. You're refusing Council authority? High Arbiter Zelana asked, clearly shocked. We're asserting our right to respond to calls for help from beings in danger, Admiral Chen corrected. The same right that any moral being has when they see someone in need of protection. The implications of this statement rippled through the council chamber. Humanity was essentially declaring itself an independent galactic power that would operate according to its own moral principles rather than established political structures. Captain Zephyr found herself speaking up. "If I may address the council," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the communication link. "I am Captain Zephyr of the Velian research vessel Gentle Current. 3 days ago, my crew and I were facing certain death or enslavement at the hands of Corvan pirates." She looked around the council chamber through the holographic link. "We sent out a general distress call, following all proper protocols. Do you know how long it would have taken the council to authorize a rescue mission? By the time your committees finished debating, we would have been dead or sold into slavery." Her crystalline form glowed with conviction. "The humans responded within hours, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to help. They asked for nothing in return except the opportunity to ensure that other peaceful beings don't suffer the same fate we almost did." Dr. Helix stepped forward beside her. "As a scientist, I can confirm that human technology and tactics are indeed superior to current galactic standards, but more importantly, their ethical framework appears to be genuinely focused on protection rather than conquest." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Here were respected members of galactic society vouching for these unknown humans who had just revolutionized interstellar politics. Finally, Chancellor Morpheus spoke. "Admiral Chen, it appears that whether we approve or not, humanity has already established itself as a galactic power. What happens now?" Admiral Chen's expression became thoughtful. "Now, Chancellor, the galaxy has a choice. Species that prey on peaceful beings will find themselves facing humanity's response every time they attack innocent vessels. Species that trade honestly, explore responsibly, and respect the rights of others will find that they have protectors watching over them." She gestured to the star map showing human fleet positions. "We're not seeking to rule the galaxy, Chancellor. We're seeking to make it safe for those who deserve safety." "And if the Council opposes your activities?" High Arbiter Zalana asked. "Then the Council will be opposing the protection of innocent life," Admiral Chen replied simply. "I trust that's not a position any of your member species would want to take publicly." The Council members exchanged glances, realizing they had been outmaneuvered completely. Humanity had positioned itself as the defenders of everything the Council claimed to stand for, but with the capability to actually deliver on those promises. "Admiral Chen," Chancellor Morpheus said finally, "I believe the Council will need time to discuss this new development in galactic affairs." "Of course, Chancellor. We'll continue our current operations while you deliberate. After all, piracy doesn't stop for political discussions." As the communication link closed, Zephyr turned to Admiral Chen with amazement. "You just told the entire Galactic Council that humanity will operate independently of their authority." "Not independently," Admiral Chen corrected with a slight smile. "Complementarily. They can continue their diplomatic efforts, their trade negotiations, and their cultural exchanges. We'll handle the situations that require immediate action and overwhelming force." Commander Rodriguez grinned. "In other words, they get to keep being politicians while we do the actual fighting." "And everyone wins," Admiral Chen concluded. "Peaceful species get protection, predatory species get deterred, and the Council gets to claim credit for improved galactic security without having to actually provide it themselves." Zephyr realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity hadn't conquered or subjugated anyone. Instead, they had simply made themselves indispensable by providing something the galaxy desperately needed but couldn't provide for itself: effective protection for the innocent. "Admiral Chen," she said, "I think my mission report is going to require several volumes." Admiral Chen laughed. and the sound was warm and reassuring. "Captain Zephyr, I have a feeling your distress signal is going to be remembered as the moment everything changed. You called for help, and you ended up calling forth humanity's promise to the galaxy." As the Indomitable moved toward the next distress signal on their ever-growing list, Zephyr reflected on the profound changes that had begun with her simple research mission. The galaxy now had guardians, protectors who had emerged from the darkness between the stars to ensure that peaceful beings could explore, trade, and live without fear. The age of human protection had begun, and the stars themselves seemed a little brighter for it.